far does freedom extend in this country? Should you have the right to marry whomever you choose, regardless of gender? Should you have the right to deny service to someone you disagree with politically? What about denying someone based on their sexual orientation and your religious beliefs? The way I see it, if you don't want to serve gays, it's because you think you have the liberty to make choices the government can't control or force, just like the government can't control who you marry or who you love. If you're keeping people out of your restaurant based on your rights, then those rights must extend to people who marry or who want to marry whomever they please, even if it offends your deepest held beliefs. Can you have it both ways? I know you want to, you kinky bastard. Welcome to the Independence. I'm your hostess in blue. I'm Kennedy. It's wonderful to have you. Thanks for joining us on The Independence. Matt Welch, he is the editor-in-chief of Reason Magazine. That is an awesome publication. You should subscribe to it today for you and everyone you love. Camille Foster from Freethink Media, an entrepreneur and a man who thinks freely in ways you could have never imagined. The three of us combined are The Independence. Hi. Woo. Let's bring in our party panel and get some work done tonight. We've got Democratic political commentator Jehmu Greene and Fox News contributor Deroy Murdock. There's a lot of sexy names on the panel. Hi, party people.
I'm sexier than that.
Yeah, you are. Let's see how sexy you are. Can you bring it?
Kinky.
And
is what I think you said.
Exactly, I did. I'll say it again. So Arizona Governor Jan Brewer is in some deep yogurt over a law she must sign or veto within 5 days that would allow businesses to deny services to gays and lesbians based on the restaurateur's religious beliefs. Brewer is under a lot of pressure from a lot of different places to just veto the damn thing, but the issue will not go away. Why is Arizona pushing the boundaries? Is it adding anything to the conversation there or in this great nation? What do you think, Deroy?
Well, I hope Jan Brewer vetoes this bill, but for a different reason than I think a lot of other people do, and that is that I don't think it goes far enough. My view is that when you're dealing with the government should treat everybody equally. So, for example, if you are in the military and you're gay, it doesn't matter, as Arizona Governor, or I should say Senator Barry Goldwater said, it doesn't matter if you're straight as long as you can shoot straight. Same with marriage. If you want to get a marriage license, it doesn't matter if you're a straight couple or gay couple. But I think if you're dealing with the private sector, private parties on private property, people ought to be able to associate with whom they want and not with whom they wish, based on the freedom of association in the First Amendment. So if this law is passed, this baker, I assume, is going to have to make cakes for gay couples. What if you're a gay baker and you decide, you know, I've got a good business making cakes for gay weddings, and a straight couple comes in and says, we want a straight wedding cake with a man and woman on top? Are you able to say, no, I don't want to do that? And they can turn around and say, well, no, you got to go ahead and do that. There's a summer camp in New Jersey called Mountain Meadow, which caters to gay parents and the kids of gay parents. What if a straight evangelical person says, I want to be a counselor at this camp? Are they required to hire that person who then can tell the kids, well, you know, this whole, two daddies thing, doesn't really fit in with the Bible? I think if it's private property, private groups, they ought to be able to associate with whom you want and not with whom you wish.
Jehmu, I can see you. I'm going to get to you in just a moment, Matt. But I can see Jehmu. She's smiling on the outside, but on the inside, you want to eat his face off. Do you want to Hannibal Lecter?
That sounds good.
I was about to slow clap you when you said that you think that she should veto it, and then you lost me. Oh my goodness, this is America, and there's a lot of private property out there, and all those private property owners can say, well, Deroy, I don't like the color of your skin, so you're not going to come into my establishment. I'm not going to serve you. This is America, and we've moved past that. Now, and I also wonder, why is it that Republicans think that the business community is so important until the business community says, you're on crack, you can't do this, and we're totally going to dismiss all of this.
But that's kind of what the business community is saying.
Yeah, they're saying, heck no, not in our state.
Vetoes.
The NFL is saying, we're going to pull the Super Bowl, and that deserves a slow clap.
It's sure. But it strikes me that is the appropriate response, and I don't really understand your perspective. I would agree with most of what you said. I think that this is a really bad law, but not because it doesn't go far enough, but because there is ample protection in the Constitution.
I'm sorry. Let me explain when I say far enough. The reason it doesn't go far enough is it's based on the idea that you have the ability to say, look, I don't want to bake a cake for you if you have a religious objection. But what if you happen to be somebody who is an atheist, but for whatever reason you don't feel like baking cakes for a gay couple, or maybe you're a gay baker and you don't really feel like making a cake for a straight couple.
Right.
If I can try to
summarize this, the bottom line is that private property is sacrosanct. And when we talk about all of the various historic injustices that were perpetrated against people of color in this country, we have to remember that the fundamental problem was that the law was playing favorites. That's what we want to eliminate.
Jim Crow laws.
Equal protection means we don't need special protection.
What the hell is going on here? Have we entered some alternate universe? Can you make sense of all of this? Because I'm so horribly confused.
So these two dudes are still objecting to the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Which is in our fairly recent past,
Right?
correct?
Look, again, there's
I don't know that Deroy actually took that position.
Remember what the 1964
Not at the same time.
You can actually already discriminate against folks for their sexual orientation in Arizona.
This
Today,
is an important part.
You can actually do that.
This
You
law
don't
is-
need a law that then
superfluous law.
codifies. You can do that discrimination.
Look, but then
We're
what the
giving you
1964
legislative
Civil
permission.
Rights Act did was get rid of the Jim Crow laws, where government said if you wanted to have an integrated restaurant, you can't do
Well,
that.
it took it
the
a
law
step
said.
further than that, though.
So it applies to the getting rid of these laws as well as the private sector. Now, for example, we had just a couple years ago a case of eHarmony.com, the dating service. They happen to be focused on straight couples, and the man who founded it was an evangelical. A man sued and said, look, I'm on eHarmony.com. I don't see anything about men seeking men. He sued. They had to pay him money. They had to set up a same-sex dating service. Now, what if somebody goes on manmate.com and says, you know, I see all these men and I don't see any women, and I'm a man and I want to see women. And he sues, and then manmate.com's got to pay him money, and this gay website then has to set up a straight website. This would be completely parallel to what happened at eHarmony.com, which is what happens when government comes in and essentially coerces people to do things they don't want to do.
Here's the question. So you guys don't like those accommodation parts of the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Okay.
You do.
When it applies to the private sector.
When it applies to the private sector, exactly. So, I mean, the truth is that law creates protected classes of people who need special protection against private actions. So my question to Jehmu is, and I'm probably more on your side than their side for Kennedy's reasons, which is that we had so much overt public racism in terms of people coming into your hotel establishment, your restaurants, your lunch counters, not that long ago. And so it makes me very tetchy to want to get rid of that.
Although if you got rid of those laws, you don't actually think that would happen.
I want to probe her.
Another black person.
So where?
There's only two.
So what is the protected class? Like, is it so if you are a religious outfit, should you be able to say no, atheist, you can't come here? If you were running a place, can you say no, I don't want to serve someone wearing a white hood with whatever else comes with a white hood?
If a KKK member comes into your diner, can you discriminate against them?
So right now in Arizona, you can discriminate because
I'm talking about you, not Arizona.
Religious reason. I don't discriminate for anything.
So
I
you
might
would not
discriminate
discriminate
against
against the
eHarmony
Klansmen.
because they did not find me a husband, but that's a whole other issue.
But should the law be used like that? Where's the line?
The law should not be used to codify discrimination, not in this country, not on our watch, not in this time where we are in our history. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Because of all of the demographic shifts that are happening in this country, all of the changes on same-sex marriage. People are doing this because they are running out of fear, and they don't want to see these types of changes. So they're running in the direction of, I want to be in my small little hole, and I want to be able to treat people badly because they aren't like me. And that is taking us.
Or maybe they feel like the government is about to tell them who they can and can't do business with if they're running a cake shop.
That's not in
bake a cake for
Arizona.
them.
There are states
but
that
Jehmu,
protect
but we-
against
But we're
sexual
talking not
orientation.
just. I mean,
Not
okay,
in
but let's
Arizona. You
don't
can
hide
discriminate
behind
in
the not
Arizona
just
all you
it's
want.
not just Arizona thing. Let's extend the conversation beyond that. Now we're having a greater theoretical discussion about the bounds of government and when they can extend those bounds and tell you what to do with your business. I don't like it either. I don't like it when people are bigots in any way, shape, or form. I'm disgusted by it, and I don't want to be in the position to defend bigots. But that's people have gotten so overly sensitive and so hyper politicized that is the position that a lot of us are forced to be in.
This is
endless
about codifying
sequences,
bigotry.
endless sequences
and
of protected
is
peoples.
against the American way.
That's what
remember,
that's
we're
what I believe.
Codifying it into law when we don't even need it. They don't even need it. Not in this state. It's already there.
Do black people need special protection today? Do you need special protection, Jehmu?
I'm good.
Well, and remember, when we talk about
There it is.
government, we're not
Locked
talking
and
about
loaded.
somebody saying, look, you're homophobic, bake the cake for these gentlemen. That's how shame.
I will-
Now we're talking about coercion, which is either you do it or we arrest you, we shut down your business. We put you
No,
under-
that's
Yes,
that's
we're
what
ta-
they'll
we're
do
ta-
if
we're
you
talking about
don't get a
Yeah,
bumper.
if the person doesn't follow the court order, you get in trouble. You get held with contempt of court. You go to jail for that.
Ew, we're gonna continue a new discussion in just moments. Coming up, the President of the United States. He's not next. You got to wait for that for a little bit. But first, when did the scientific debate over climate change become so wildly anti-scientific? And when should political money be kept on a leash, keeping billionaires out of politics? You definitely can't have that both ways. It's The Independent.
So free. And every day I wanna get on my camel and ride. Hey, and when the days I know just like Buddy Holly. Oh, and you'll marry Tyler Moore. I don't care what this is.
Welcome back to The Independent. And like Nellie's oven, it's getting hot in here. Indeed. There are few topics as divisive in the modern political age as global climate change. What should be a purely scientific discussion has bled into a political war, with people like Secretary of State John Kerry deeming global warming a weapon of mass destruction. Trying to bring some perspective to the argument, Charles Krauthammer, who works at Fox News Channel, wrote in the Washington Post, quote, "I am not a global warming believer. I'm not a global warming denier. I've long believed that it cannot be good for humanity to be spewing tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I also believe that those scientists who pretend to know exactly what this will cause in 20, 30, or 50 years are white-coated propagandists." 110,000 people signed a petition to keep Krauthammer's benign global warming comments out of the Washington Post. But can't a man express a contrary opinion anymore without being declared an enemy? Krauthammer said on a Raleigh Factor earlier tonight, this.
Well, I was just objecting to Obama saying in his State of the Union address that global warming is settled science. There is no such thing as settled science. I'm not a global warming denier. I'm not a global warming believer. I'm a skeptic. I'm open to empirical evidence.
Oh, my God. I take what he said, and I think it's a very intelligent position. I think it's a very thoughtful thing for the man to say, I don't know either way. What we're doing, what they're saying is causing so much harm is definitely a bad thing. The jury's still out. Why are they acting like we've got the verdict?
Because it's a great way to shut down discussion. I mean, there's a big problem right now in climate science. I'm someone who thinks that the climate is warming, the globe is warming, and man is causing it. But the models that people use to predict how fast it will increase the temperature, all those, I mean, all of them, every single one has been overshooting it for the last 15 years. So there's obviously some question about cause and effect and how fast this is going to happen. And there's a huge question about what should be done, if anything, in terms of public policy to combat this. But what people are trying to do is to retreat into the science is settled period, so that anyone who even expresses that kind of lukewarm skepticism is not really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's hardly a polemic statement from Charles Krauthammer.
The polemic statement is from John Kerry, who the other week said we should not allow a tiny minority of shoddy scientists and extreme ideologues to compete with scientific facts. So break down that sentence. We should not allow X to compete with scientific facts. That's not his call. He's a politician. It is the call of science. Science is all about weird people saying, I don't think so, and challenging beliefs.
Yeah, and prove me wrong, by the way. That's what the scientific method is. And it took many scientists and lots of discourse and lots of failures to come to what we know as the modern scientific method.
Look, Galileo stood up to settled science. I mean, going back 400, 500 years. And science, the scientific method is the constant testing of hypotheses. You talked about the models. Roy Spencer's at the University of Alabama in Huntsville did some excellent research. I'm writing about this in National Review Online tomorrow. And he looked at 90 different models, climate models, and found that the 90 climate models on average found 91% more warming on the planet for 2013 than actually existed based on measurements from satellites. So these models are way, way, way off. So I think there ought to be a discussion, there ought to be a debate, and the last thing we ought to be doing is saying, no, don't run that article, Washington Post, don't run that article. That's why God created letters to the editor. So let Krauthammer say what he wants and write as many letters as he wish.
Yeah, and if you overwhelm the editor's mailbox, then you know that it has spurred quite a discussion. No.
So what we're saying is letters to the editor are good, but petitions aren't.
I mean, trying to squash his
Trying to
speech
stop him
so
from
he
running.
can't make
censorship.
benign
It's
comments.
not, has nothing to do with freedom of speech. It's not the government stepping in. Activism is a
Who
part
said
of the,
anything about freedom
is
of speech?
a part of the
Don't
American
say that, please. When no
fabric.
one here said anything about freedom of speech.
I thought I heard the word censorship, but
No.
maybe
No,
I was
it's not about
imagining it
censorship.
in the same way. Now, I will say, I think that Charles actually is one of the conservatives who is right on this issue, and we should not be making him, progressives should not be making him the target. But there are a bunch of Looney Tunes out there that would say, well, we should have a panel on the fact that the earth is flat or the earth is round, and everyone should have their side of the story be presented. No, there are some things that are scientific fact, and maybe Secretary Kerry went a little bit too far, but I just can't feel sorry for Charles when he goes into a television studio, does hair and makeup, puts his opinion out there, puts it on paper. People can complain and say, shut up, I don't want to listen to what you're saying.
No, they didn't just
That's the
complain.
American way.
They asked the Washington Post not to run his article.
They have that right to do that. They have
They have a right
do.
to make that
They do.
comment, but
And
the
we
impulse
can-
shouldn't be don't run the article. The article should be run the article and let us run a counter article. Run them side by side.
Well, let's try to find a little bit
That's
of
how you
let's try to
come.
find a little bit of
That's how you come
consensus
to
here.
a greater understanding on a
You
topic.
contact the Washington
By
Post
the
and say,
way,
look, we'd like to run a piece right next
allow
to
someone to
Krauthammer's or the
challenge
next
your
guy.
I think we
beliefs.
can
That's
establish.
what makes
I think
you
we
That's how you
stronger.
handle free speech.
I think we can find a little bit of consensus here.
Can you feel the love tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Let's establish a fact that we can say that the world has gotten warmer. But, Jehmu, I think we would all agree that it is going to be particularly difficult to predict how warm it will be 50 years from now. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
mean, the
that
models we
there-
have haven't stood up for the last
that is
15,
that is a
so.
conversation that has some nuance
Right.
to it. But on the flip side, you know that there are some cray-cray people out there who are saying that
Again,
it just
we're
does not
talking about
exist.
the- we're talking
So I
about
think
the
Charles
time out.
being
We're
the
talking
target
about the
of
future.
progressives, it's the wrong target.
But
We
we're
shouldn't be
talking about
targeting
but
him.
we're talking about the future. And as we talk about the future, let's talk about what we ought to do about this warming, if it will.
We ought to do
remain.
And by the way,
something. We ought to
squashing-
do something
even that,
instead of what many conservatives think is that we ought to do
but Jehmu,
nothing.
there is
Okay,
a
we're doing a
serious
lot of
conversation
over-talking,
to
and
be had.
I have a higher chair, so I'm going to make a point right now.
Please.
All right?
I'm going to sit up
Trying
straighter.
to squash someone's beliefs because they disagree with you is the exact opposite of the scientific method. And that is not, and academics who engage in that should be ashamed of themselves, especially those who study the maths and the science.
And more importantly,
correct.
politicians who try to do that should be extra ashamed for themselves, or we should be calling them out first. It's the
And
people,
they clearly don't have understanding when they insert rhetoric into what should be a scientific.
and it's the Secretary of State, right? This is not his job, actually.
He's not Secretary of Science, is he?
No, not the last
And
time
he's
I
not
checked.
president.
Might be.
He's not president.
By the way, the president did not, I'll say it again, he did not devote a lot of time in the State of the Union if this is a weapon of mass destruction. So get your message straight, gentlemen. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you very
Good
much.
stuff. All right. Well, libertarians are the craze of the future, according to Joe Trippi and Rand Paul. But who gets these liberty-leaning politicos elected? We'll ask a young person about the madness of libertarian independence, and we'll play Ask a Communist a little later. Sounds like the independents. Stay with us.
Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. You can't go home, no, I swear you never can.
This is the Independence, where we've seen the tide changing, the storm brewing for years. And now we're ready to do something about it. Are you? Now, who finds these libertarian-leaning candidates you hear so much about? And how much influence will these fresh faces have on the 2014 midterm elections? More importantly, the 2016 presidential race. Will we elect one of our own? And by that I mean someone who's not an overspending, out-of-touch insider hell-bent on a narcissistic power grab, Jeff Frazee. He's so crazy. He's the executive director of Young Americans for Liberty. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Oh, it's great to have you. So tell me, are you guys just flush with cash? And how do you find the candidates that you support?
Well, I wish that was the case. We are raising more money by the day, but we've spent literally hundreds of hours interviewing and vetting candidates across the country, and we're trying to find pro-liberty, principled constitutionalists that are fit in the mold of Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Justin Amash. And we're doing our best to raise as much money as we can to help them propel them to election, propel them to victory.
Are you trying to find people who historically have not held public office? Are you trying to find people who have excelled in business and outside of politics?
Well, it's wherever we can find candidates that have a real shot of winning the election and that really carry our views. We look for candidates that promote free markets, that promote strong civil liberties positions, and have a humble foreign policy. Like I said, people that fit in the Ron Paul and Rand Paul mold.
Jeff, tell me about the Democrats you're supporting. And if you're not supporting any, which ones are you looking for? Is it just going to be a little Republican ghetto within, or a libertarian ghetto within the Republican Party?
The Justin Amash's, the Thomas Masseys, and what have you?
I would love to support Democrats. I would love to support libertarian candidates. As I said, our issues are for free markets, civil liberties, and a humble foreign policy. Unfortunately, I can't find many Democrats that support those positions. But we would be the first to support them. It's not about party, it's about principle.
What about a guy like Jared Polis from Colorado, who's pretty good on several of those issues?
I've heard the name. We're actually looking into him now. Stay tuned.
All right.
Well, congratulations. I think you are the first person to wear a half-zip pullover on the show.
A Yale pullover, no less. Hello.
I'm trying to stay youthful, I guess. We represent Young Americans for Liberty. We have over 500 campus chapters nationwide.
Oh, that's a YAL sweatshirt. I'm sorry, I thought you said Yale. I thought your collar was covering the E, but that's YAL, which is your organization.
And in terms of your growth and your membership, how are you reaching out to more young people and getting them activated and getting them involved in your organization?
Yeah, well, it's been wonderful. A lot of them have flocked to us because of the revolution that Ron Paul has inspired. But we have full-time regional directors that are scattered across the country that are constantly recruiting young people. Facebook is a wonderful tool to find new activists. And but you'd be surprised. A lot of young people today are inspired by these libertarian ideas. They're Googling our name. They're Googling libertarian youth. They're finding us. And we're doing our best to engage them in the political process.
So what has been the biggest help to you? The Edward Snowden NSA story or the failure of Obamacare?
Obama's been a great help because he's done everything he can to destroy the country, and he's sent a lot of people our way as a result. A lot of people supported Obama in 2008 because they were looking for hope and change, and all he's done is really doubled down on Bush's policies. And young people have become disenfranchised as a result, and they've come around our way. And I think it's a very good sign. There's a silver lining here. As the country gets worse, more people are waking up and discovering the ideas of liberty, and that's an exciting thing for me.
Who's your candidate for 2016?
Oh, it's too early to tell, but I think someone like a Rand Paul, if he decides to run, would be excellent in the White House.
All right, very good. And how are you guys on social issues? I know a lot of younger voters, sort of liberty-leaning millennials, are put off by Republican social issues. Where do you guys stand?
We have a very wide range. We have pro-lifers. We support big supporters of the Second Amendment. But issues like homosexuality, I think we look at it, the Constitution, and don't see a federal role in it whatsoever. That's something that we differ with the Republicans quite often. And we should see it put back at the states, and the states should decide these issues. This is how it's always been. This is how federalism is supposed to be structured. So we have a very wide range on the social issues. Our focus tends to be much more on the economics, the civil liberties, and the foreign policy.
All right, very good, Jeff Frazee. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Keep us posted. We will be watching.
I certainly will.
Awesome. Coming up, the President of the United States, then surfing crocodiles. And first, we found these primordial reptiles. They could climb trees, and now they can surf. I smell a sponsorship, and I can feel drops of news on my tongue. Must be the tropical storm. That's next. Welcome back to The Independence, where we have Doppler 7000 radar that tracks news storms 24 hours a day. It is the tropical storm. Welcome to it. Topic number one. One of the favoriteest activities for a nice weekend brunch for any New Yorker. It's just a wonderful thing. Other than a buffet of waffles and bacon, what's the best part of brunch? Bottomless drinks. Breakfast booze is an age-old tradition, one that's revered in the Big Apple and around the world, but an obscure state law in New York makes it illegal to sell unlimited cups of liquor for a set price. Most restaurant owners don't know about the law. All they know is if you get a table full of giggling 30-somethings, they tip beautifully. Well, I got to shut down the good times, New York.
They're not shutting down the good times, but that's all these stupid laws that get on the books and never go away. It's the New York Post who dug it up and pointed this out. I mean, half the restaurants in my neighborhood in Brooklyn would go out of business on Sundays if they couldn't serve really bad mimosas all day long.
The weakest mimosas with concentrated orange juice.
That are totally awesome.
And Asti Spumante.
Still get me totally drunk. As you both know, I cannot have more than 2 drinks before I start to throw money around and mysteriously
If you clean a
lose
wound
my shirt.
with rubbing
That happens.
alcohol, you get drunk.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'm working on it. I'm sorry.
I got the solution. His name is Hendrix. Hendrix Gin.
Yeah, that's actually not the solution.
Totally is.
Shockingly.
We should have brunch. Topic number 2. George W. Bush may be the greatest former president in history. Instead of giving long-winded speeches, globe-trotting, or raking in billions on political favors, he sits around and paints pictures of kitties and little doggies and Jay Leno. It is an odd and worthy pursuit, I have to say, and maybe current and future presidents should learn a few things from GWB. When you leave the White House, pick up a paintbrush, shut your mouth, and go away. You can see 24 of his luscious paintings on display at the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Great job, Brownie.
You can imagine the progress he might have made in his painting career had he just forgone the presidency altogether and started painting right away.
I would love to see an art critic faced with some abstract impressionism and George Bush paintings.
Maybe he's working through some issues. I think he was my least favorite president, I think, in my lifetime that I remember, because I don't remember Gerald Ford that much. But he's my favorite ex-president. He just went away and shut up.
Mine was
stuff.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Good luck with that, sir.
Such a jerk.
Enjoy.
Topic number 3. Who knew pot was so deadly? Keeping it consistent to spread lies and hysteria about drug use, Annapolis Police Chief Michael Pristoop cited a news story that said 37 people in Colorado died in one day from marijuana overdose. That's horrible. Really? No, it was a fake story from the Daily Current, and he only remembered the phony headline. It is so easy to get confused. Fake news is probably a lot funnier when you're stoned.
I mean, really.
That's so awesome.
This would have brought the total number of pot-related overdose fatalities to 37.
Yeah, it would have
Exactly.
raised it by 3,700%.
That's it.
It's amazing. This is exactly how drug scares go. You get a cop who knows absolutely nothing to talk about how this awful drug that's going to cause you to eat people's faces off is coming to town.
In front of an eagerly anticipating and rapt legislative body.
But a hero state senator, Jamie Raskin, immediately stood up and said, WTF?
That's wrong. You lie. Topic number 4. Who doesn't love surfing? The feeling of dropping in on your first wave can change your life or turn you into a heartless predator. Western Australians know they live in the company of salties. That's right, salties, I'll said it. Or giant saltwater crocodiles who live in water and lie in wait for helpless victims. One 13-foot salty took a break from eating babies to hang 10 in some of the famous surf at Cable Beach. Local surfers were amused once they washed the poop from their trunks.
I don't believe this for a second. I think it's like the shark that came in during Hurricane Sandy to the subway thing. It just
The Sharknado.
The Sharknado.
I object. I object. Totally real. This is the most successful predator in the planet's history. They have been around since the time of the dinosaurs.
I totally believe
They
it.
are amazing.
I've seen dolphins surf. I've seen otters surf. Why not? Surfing is fun. Have you ever been to Western Australia?
No.
Have you ever surfed?
The boogie board.
That's not. It's
We should
sponsored.
do that.
How dare you?
We should go there.
What's wrong with these people? All right, the President of the United States is coming up next. For real, we're that big. We're the independents.
Convincing the president to change his mind.
You would be making a disastrous mistake.
I feel like I'm losing control of my own goddamn administration.
You are out of line, Frank.
There is but one rule. Hunt or be hunted. Welcome back.
Now is a clip from season 2 of the smash hit Netflix show House of Cards, which dives into the dark Machiavellian underbelly of life in a fictitious Washington, D.C. Michel Gill plays the president on House of Cards. Welcome to the Independents, Michael.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the tune. That makes me feel at home.
It really doesn't it? Should I hear you're sleeping with the Secretary of State?
Oh, did you hear that? Yeah. That's a good little bit, isn't it?
That is.
I'm very lucky that way.
You are. You absolutely are. And what great fortune to be cast on a show that is such a massive hit that not only are sophisticated consumers of TV devouring this Netflix sensation, but the President of the United States. Are you surprised at how this has touched people inside and outside of D.C.?
I'm just thrilled. I'm excited, and I'm not surprised because it's just such a wonderful model to, and I've said this before, to impose a Shakespearean drama on our political system. It's just, how more exciting could that be? So I think it's great, and I'm just so excited that Washington is enjoying it.
Is it King Lear or As You Like It? Or both?
Yeah, well, I'd say Othello, a little bit of Richard III, some Macbeth, definitely King, but more Macbeth and Richard III.
Oh, I love Macbethian tragedies. Banquo!
Yes, everybody's bloodied at the end, right? But the ghosts come back, don't they?
And they always do. They run the show. That's the thing about it. House of Cards, could this show, I know that Netflix has become really the most successful content franchise going, and you can tell that by the award shows, by the way people consume the shows that they put out. Could this thrive and exist, first of all, on network TV or on HBO? Like, is Netflix an important part of House of Cards' success?
Oh, I think it's huge. I think Netflix has opened the floodgates, and I think everybody will follow, and I think it's very exciting. So, although they were bold enough to take that first step, I think people will follow. I don't know how the networks are going to work around this, whether they'll create their own streaming venues, but I think the audience is the one that really now asks and sees things the way they want to see them. And we have to, the studios and everybody has to give that to them. Like, the mistakes that the music industry made, you give it to them. And as Kevin Spacey sort of said this at the lecture that he gave in Edinburgh this year, if you give it to them, they won't steal it. So just give it all, and they can watch it in any form and any time that they want.
Mike, I wonder how this has affected your view of government. This is a rather cynical take on Washington. I remember seeing Kevin Spacey talking about his character on the show and actually suggesting that the plot lines weren't so far from reality. That may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I wonder if you've become a bit more cynical about Washington having shadowed some of the politicians in preparation for playing this role.
No.
Not at all.
I'm not more cynical. No.
So you're already pretty cynical.
I'm pretty much there.
Yeah, the only criticism I might offer when I look at this versus something like The West Wing is the fact that all of the politicians are hyper competent. They just get things done all the time. Is that a fair assessment? And do you look at programs like West Wing as you were preparing for this?
I did, yes. And I've looked at West Wing. I had some friends on it, and I didn't use that to prepare. I figured I had that in my memory bank. I went much more to real footage and research of our presidents and our political system. It's although there were things in West Wing, you looked at West Wing and you thought, wouldn't I really love for our government to work this way? And then you look at our show and you do see Kevin Spacey's character getting things done. And even President Obama has, we've heard him say, I wish I was, or we were as ruthlessly efficient. So from that perspective, yes, things are getting done under this, again, this Shakespearean imposition on the political system. So you have to balance as an audience the two sides, that although you're watching a political system that you're familiar with, you have to give it a little bit of license with the way you would be watching a Richard III, where people get bloodied and every 15 minutes somebody dies, and then you woo their wives, and people sit in the audience and actually believe that could happen. So you've got to give it that license and go with it, and with that, you also have to give it the kind of effective, efficient quality that we're getting done in this show.
All right, last question. Who is your favorite fake president?
Me.
Perfect answer.
Excellent answer.
House of Cards. Michael
I
Gill,
don't
thank
know.
you very much.
There are such great presents. You bet. Thanks.
Oh, no, there are. No, I agree. And next time you come back, you can enumerate a list.
Love to.
I'd love it. For more stories from the world of Hollywood, check out our special show this Friday night, The Grouchy Oscars. It's airing Friday at 9 and midnight, 6 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Business Network. Coming up, Ask a Communist. Avowed communist Jesse Myerson is back with extreme views that we're ready to take down. That's next.
I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. I have to turn my head until my darkness goes.
Independence, where it's time for one of our favorite segments, Ask a Communist. Venezuela continues to be in turmoil. Protests have been flaring against the socialist government there, which might not be a bad thing, but not everyone is happy about the unrest. Jesse Myerson is here. He's the host of the podcast, Disorderly Conduct. So why are you against the protesters in Venezuela? That's question number one on Ask a Communist, Jesse.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm against all the protesters, right? It seems like the students are really well-intentioned, and they have a legitimate grievance against Maduro's, consolidation of power over the university system.
It's a lot of crime. A lot of
There's
inflation.
an awful lot of crimes, a lot of inflation, there's lots of legitimate grievances. The protesters I'm really against are the people who tried to engineer a coup there with U.S. backing a decade ago, like Leopoldo Lopez, who's like, during the coup, like went around with a squadron, like arresting government ministers, and then later said he was proud of it. And like these people are like some serious far-right, oligarchic, nasty people, and those are the guys who I really oppose.
As opposed to the far-left oligarchic, nasty people who actually run the country.
Well, I know that you really want me to be like the pro-Maduro guy.
No, actually, we want you to be rational.
I'm really not. I mean, look, there's big problems, and you know me, I'm an Occupy guy. I'm not a big state power kind of dude. Who I really support in Venezuela are the Bolivarian revolutionaries, which is a movement that precedes Chavismo, and the poor people in the barrios, the Afro-Venezuelans, the indigenous populations, who've really done a lot of great self-organization, who've started tens of thousands of workers' cooperatives, urban land committees, and stuff like that. And those are the people who I really feel allegiance to, not the government.
All right, next question.
So this is a continuation of a conversation we had on Twitter over the weekend. You are much more prolific on Twitter than I am. I don't have the stamina to exchange a bunch of stuff with you. But 200-odd years of extraordinary progress, GDP growth, which is not a perfect metric, but we can look at life expectancy, we can look at all sorts of measures of prosperity and growth. We've seen a lot of it over the last 200 years. What do you attribute that to? And what do you attribute the pretty systematic failure of Soviet-style government in terms of accomplishing those same kinds of things?
Well, the Soviet government definitely accomplished lots of GDP growth. It went from being a backward,
which is why I gave you some additional
society,
qualifications,
and then became, obviously it skyrocketed under Stalin because there was all this industrialization. Industrialization tends to create great economic growth. Unfortunately, it also tends to create slavery, both in the Soviet Union and the United States.
Kind of sucks.
But I would say that probably life expectancy is mostly to be attributed to advances in science, basically through publicly funded research.
Not necessarily.
Sanctions. Over the weekend, you tweeted that the U.S. should stop its sanctions against Cuba, a position with which I certainly wholeheartedly agree. Do you think that we should have not also applied sanctions to, let's say, South Africa? Are there any places where we should or retroactively should have applied economic sanctions against another country?
I think sanctions typically tend to. I think that sanctions can be well applied if there is a promise to ease them if certain things happen. But in Cuba, what we want to do is like starve the beast and then make the Castro government fall. And obviously, it hasn't worked. I mean,
real world example so South Africa is your real world example. Are there any other examples that come to mind?
Of good sanctions?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. I can tell you that the sanctions against Iran are extremely inhumane and obviously not working.
Okay, question number 4. Have you ever held non-communist beliefs?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's sort of hard to say what is and isn't a communist belief. Communism, for me, is like an aspiration of like total non-ownership of everything. And then there's like ways to get there. There's steps. And, I'm sort of a civil libertarian and all this kind of stuff. I will say that the Bush administration did a number on me because it was so awful and evil that for a time I was like, I thought, I was like a Howard Dean fan and, when I was a senior in high school and thought like maybe there was a possibility in the Democratic Party. But now I see that they're a bunch of frauds.
Okay, very last question. Would you rather live in North Korea or Orange County, California?
Orange County, California, provided
Sellout.
that I could, lead the revolution.
You're a total sellout. All right. Jesse, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We'll have more Ask a Communist soon enough. Next, Keeping It Camille, about a scandal in the world of Bitcoin, intrigue, mystery, digital currency, and theft. What's next? Welcome back to The Independence. Hey, things are falling apart in the studio. Dobbs, I told you. Okay?
Not yet.
The world of Bitcoin has been rocked by bad news. The world's largest Bitcoin exchange has stopped trading. The company reportedly lost millions worth of Bitcoins, and it's also confusing. That means we have to keep it Camille. Camille, what happened?
Well, it's approximately.
You love Bitcoin. You've got a Bitcoin fetish.
I don't know if that's true. I am generally bullish on Bitcoin, and I still am optimistic about Bitcoin's future. The reality is we had a institution fail. Bitcoin has been around since 2009. That's not a very long time. Our financial system is much older than that, and we still occasionally suffer pretty serious dislocations.
But there's a bug in the system that eats money?
Well, again, that's
a bad system.
That is certainly the way this was reported early on. It's not
That's
clear.
what you told me
Well, it's not.
earlier.
Well, again, it's how it was reported early on. It's not clear that that is what's happened here. There is a lot of money at stake, approximately $409 million worth of Bitcoin. That's
Really?
a lot of money that people, potentially have been parted from, as much as that.
And it's like vanished?
Yeah, well, not vanished.
My Bitcoin wallet is now empty?
We don't know where it is exactly because this company is not being particularly transparent. And this is the important thing.
Sucks.
But these institutions.
I want to love Bitcoin, but it scares
These
me.
institutions will need to come into existence over
My
time.
made-up money is now made-up gone.
Perhaps the
For
most
real.
important thing would be a regulatory environment that is not tremendously
Whoa.
uncertain,
Wow.
because that's what we exist
Status.
under today, right? No one is quite sure whether or not the federal government might come in and totally make Bitcoin illegal tomorrow. So what would help is a basic technology-agnostic regulatory structure that allows companies that have great reputations to come into the marketplace and to invest and to create
not real
the
good.
institutions Bitcoin needs to get
See
things
that?
done.
So let me get this straight.
That graphic is actually a little off, but that's a technical detail.
So the
actual price is around
decentralized,
$500.
I would call it
decentralized
volatile.
anarchists who are like totally going to be off the grid, man, and have a currency that you can't actually feel in your hands, now want state regulation. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what I said.
All right.
You are totally turning into Jesse Myerson. Well, thank you so much for watching. We're going to be back here tomorrow night at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. Make sure you join us for the internet show, Independence After Hours. That's where all the crazy stuff happens. It's going to be good tonight. FoxBusiness.com/TheIndependence. And for Matt Welch and Camille Foster, I'm Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a great night for us. I want you to go have a good night. Thank you.